Welcome to the Inside Scoop, your one-stop shop for cracking the leadership code. Have you ever wondered what those conversations are like in the boardroom? Curious about the secret sauce successful executives possess? On the Inside Scoop podcast, we sit down with successful executives, getting their unique perspective on what it takes to be a good leader. They'll share their hard-won wisdom, the crucial competencies needed to thrive as a leader, and the unexpected lessons learned along the way. Here, we unlock the secrets of the executive suite. We get the inside track directly from the leaders themselves. In each episode, we'll dissect the essential skills needed to go from manager to leader, offering a leader's perspective on the challenges, triumphs, and unexpected wisdom they've acquired. The Inside Scoop, leadership lessons, served fresh.
I'm so glad you guys joined us again for another episode of the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Eduardo Bryant, and today we're going to be talking about a leader's usual but unusual journey. You're going to want to stay around and listen to this one. If you hear stuff that resonates with you and you like it, we encourage that you subscribe and become part of our viewership. And this podcast, it's available wherever you get your podcasts. Now, our guest today has held the title of vice president. She's in the HR space. She works for Insperity. Her name is Vanessa Morris. You're going to want to watch and listen to the great path that she has taken. I'm quite sure it'll resonate with many of you. So without any further ado, let's talk to a leader in this space and get some inside scoop on what they think. Vanessa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Eduardo. I'm glad to be here.
You know, it's a pleasure. And I've been looking forward to this interview now for a while, simply because most of us have had an unusual path, if I can say that. Most of it just doesn't happen straight. But before we dig into that and get all into it, I always like to know what my guests are reading. Certainly an executive like yourself, you're staying at the top of your game and the things that you're doing to make sure your skills stay sharp. I always like to know, what are you reading right now?
There is something that I actually picked back up, and it is Monday Morning Leadership by David Cottrell. It is a very short book. It's probably less than 100 pages, but it's a story of a leader's journey that actually is having problems. And so he meets with this individual that is very skilled in his craft, and he begins to mentor him. And so I like that book because, and I've recommended it to clients before that I've worked with, because it's a short read for one thing. You know, with leaders, you have very limited time. It's a short read, and it's in a story form. So it always gives you that kind of connection because you can personalize the message. And so it's pitfalls really that us leaders have fell into. One, not addressing things in a timely manner, not addressing poor performers. When the business is going well, everybody's making money, we ignore these things. So when things start to go, a little bit awry, then you say, you know what, things are going bad, or you befriend your coworkers or your subordinates. So this book kind of walks through the steps of really holding himself accountable as a leader, and a mentor is helping him with that process. So I love the book. Like I said, I've recommended it before, and actually a mentor actually gave it to me. And so it really helped me in my journey. So I'm reading that again. And then also I'm always reading the good book, the Bible. It's just tons of leader journeys, of pitfalls and triumphs, and how God takes you through them if you allow him to. So I'm always reading that. So those are a couple of the books that I read, or I'm reading.
Both of those sound great. I mean, think about it. Not every book has to be really long, and you talked about it,
Right.
100 pages. That's key, because you can get some great nuggets right away out of that.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's a journey and a path. So that's really good. I'm glad to hear that you're reading that. In addition to that, I mean, who can go wrong with reading the Bible? I like the way you connected and said that it's about leaders because, I don't think
Yes,
a lot of people really think of the Bible as actually being about leaders, but there's a lot of leadership.
there's,
Yeah,
yes, tons, tons.
yeah. So
It
I like,
actually reminds me a little bit, not to cut you off, it really reminds me of the book it's by Kenneth Blanchard. Okay. And it's Lead Like Jesus. And it talks about the heart, hands, habits. It's like four of them: heart, hands, head, and habits. That's it. And so actually, I remember kind of teaching a class on that, is that really getting into those four areas of leadership. Your head, first of all, making sure that, what you're thinking in your mind and how you're going about it, your heart doing what's right, your habits being, your integrity and things like that. And so that is a really good book too. And he took it straight from the Word of God. So you think from the very onset of Scripture, Moses, leader, Joshua, these are leaders. And so it goes all the way up, and it's all peppered in with Christ all the way through. And then there's leaders of, whether it's Elijah with Elisha, mentorship. Okay. Then you have, Ruth and Naomi. That's a mentorship. You have in the New Testament, Paul and Timothy. I mean, leadership is all over the place in the word. So you can't go wrong with it anyway, but you can learn a lot of leadership qualities in the Word of God.
you know what, great examples. And I think a lot of people probably don't connect it quite like that, especially when you're
Hmm.
talking about leadership. But you're spot on. That's exactly what
Hmm.
it is. It's about leadership. And I know
It is.
managers and leaders, as we are trying to lead a group of people, be it a sales team or be it just a
Yes.
team of people, it's so important that we are leading them and trying to do the very best. I connect
Yes.
that to why it's important, and that is this. Remember, as a leader, you
Hmm.
are affecting people's lives.
Yes, you are.
If you are a good leader, an inspiring
Hmm.
leader, then people go
Hmm.
home at the end of the day and they're inspired.
Yes. Yes.
They feel
Yes.
good. But if you're the
Yes.
kind of leader that's ruling with an iron fist, then you
Hmm.
send your people home just a
Yeah,
bit dejected at the end of a day.
absolutely.
I think it's important to
Absolutely.
recognize that.
I think it's important too, yeah, and it reminds me of a kind of leadership instance that I had with one of my employees that used to work for me. And I also believe you can terminate someone with respect and dignity. And you can actually, and I actually have a friendship with her to this day,
Tell us about that.
because in this particular instance, this individual she already came to me. She was transferred to my department already with write-ups and such. So what I did is I said, you know what, let's spend some time together. So I began to do some one-on-one coaching with her. And so a lot of the issue was the fact that she didn't feel like she belonged. Nobody wants to belong. We go to work to make money to pay bills, but we spend a lot of time there, and we need to be connected to a group of people, to a couple of people, somebody that values us, someone that encourages us, someone who cares. So I spent some time with her really for about a year. So she started having some more attendance problems. I would write her up. I'm still going to follow all the protocol. We're developing a relationship. I'm, gathering, what she's doing and connecting it with the team, bringing her in on assignments, connecting her as a group. But it came time that by about the third time, which she and I already spoke about it, that she was on probation, and if she was late another time, she would get terminated. Well, I come into my office. I was getting ready to go into a meeting. She stopped me and she says, Vanessa, I was late today. She said, I know what you have to do because you've already told me. And so I'm just letting you know. I said, thank you very much. So long story short, she was terminated. Now, because I was truthful with her, I had invested in her, the group had invested in her, and she still did not hold up her part. She accepted the fact that it was on her, that it was her responsibility, and she didn't hold it. And also, the team saw that I was going to hold her accountable and I was going to hold myself accountable because there's nothing worse than other teammates carrying a load and they watch other people kind of flail around and the leader does nothing about it. And so it was a lesson for me. I think I grew in that because you don't have to be angry or upset with someone or get to the point where you're just fed up to terminate someone. It doesn't have to go that way.
Let me tell you what I heard in that. I heard that you did your job as a leader.
Mhm.
I heard that you took time to not only give an employee several chances, but
Mhm.
that you helped that employee to see what is expected of them and to invite them into the opportunity to
Mhm.
participate in their own success. And by
Yes.
doing that, you had earned the right to have an open, a frank, a crucial conversation. Phrase it
Mhm.
however you want, because you
Mhm.
did your job as a leader, as a
Mhm.
manager, as a supervisor
Mhm.
over someone else. And I think
Mhm.
there's a whole space in there that we could spend an hour talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
The role of a manager that goes beyond what's just written in their job description,
Yes.
part that shows the human side of all of us. And that once
Yes.
we reach a level of supervisory, we're no
Mhm.
longer just putting our feelings on the shelf. We still
That's
feel
right.
it's still part of us.
Yes. Yes.
The way we treat people is important.
Yes, it
So,
is.
so to me, being able to have that level of transparency
Mhm.
with this employee and
Mhm.
for her to come to you and say, hey, we already talked about it. I'm not going to try to hide
Mhm.
it. I was late.
Mhm.
That employee took
Mhm.
accountability.
Yes.
People
Yes.
take accountability when they feel trusted and valued. And what you
Yes.
did as a leader helped them to understand if your behavior remains, then it's
Mhm.
not me, it's you doing it to yourself, which is when I think
Right.
the phrase was born, help me help
Yeah,
you.
help you. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Now I can say, and I know we'll walk through or kind of talk about some various things, but of course, there's also some times when I didn't do it and what that cost. There was a particular time I could remember that I had a review with an employee and we had had some mild conversations over the year, over the review period. But when I met with this employee, I really kind of laid out where they were not meeting the mark. This review was 2 days. I actually talked to this person because at the same time I was talking to them, I had to apologize because he told me, why didn't you tell me that all this was going on and this is how you were interpreting my work and all that? There's twofold in that. One, as a person that is working, you know your responsibilities without anyone telling you. You know what you're hired to do. You have job description. I'm big on that. Job description. You have, periodic one-on-ones and things like that. Well, back in the day, you didn't have a lot of one-on-ones. It was like a different environment, like in the 90s. It wasn't quite as sophisticated as it is now. So, he told me, and I said, you know what? I have to own up to that. I'm still going to lead this, but I'm going to leave and give an opportunity of how I'm going to better partner with you in this transition of trying to get, things to where they need to be according to what you were hired to do. Now, so I had to own up to that. That was also a lesson for me is like, you can't passively discuss these things. Well, you got to turn that in, Sam or whatever the name is. You got to get to that. No, this is the third time. You got to put some meat on the bones. You have to do it. You have to document. You have to discuss, coach, performance improvement plan, whatever you need to do, but it needs to happen, and it needs to happen not in a sort of casual way, especially in HR. You've got to document, that's for sure.
Yeah, HR is a space where documentation, I think, lives and breathes and grows.
Yeah.
So for sure, you have to do it there. And it's interesting just listening to you kind of talk a little bit about that, because I find that as employees have to take, we call it accountability of what their
Yes.
work responsibility is, and they have to
Mhm.
do that. Sometimes you got the wrong person on the bench. You know,
Absolutely.
I talk to leaders and managers all the time. It starts with the hiring process. People
Yes.
sometimes hire people that have been in the same industry for a while, or they've got
Mhm.
the pedigree says that they've done something for X number of years, therefore you assume
Mhm.
that they should be a pretty good candidate. But
Mhm.
when you find that some of those people you hire, they've got to
Mhm.
have that self-will. You know, it's a can-do and a will.
Yes. Yes.
They've
Yes.
got to be willing to do what they need to do. And that's not always self-evident just because they worked for the company down the street, which happens to be in the
Right.
same.
Right.
You got to get
I
people
agree.
like it.
I agree.
Someone said to me, you can't teach, give a hoot. You can't teach that. If people don't
Yes,
give a hoot, you can't teach that, right?
right. You
So
cannot teach that. You
you
can't.
can, right?
No, you cannot teach that. I call it, of course, initiative. I'm like, you can't teach that,
Right.
and it's like if either they care about it or they don't. And you're so right about it. So that's where the accountability really comes into play, because there are some, they'll just they'll skirt the lines. They'll just skirt it or cross it, and then you're like, okay, come on now. So yes, you can't teach that. So that's where the Monday Morning Leadership book, it talks about um, superstars, middle stars, and falling stars. That always stuck with me. So, you got to take care of your superstars, because you can't have all the weight on them just because they're a superstar. Your middle stars, you're training to be, superstars. But those fallen stars, they either go up or they got to fall out. You know? It just, it's like that. You do it with grace, but you got to do it. Yeah.
I am sure there's somebody in their car right now trying to figure out how to remember superstar, middle star, and falling star, because both hands are on the wheel and they can't write it down. Other it might be at their desk in their office or sitting. They were looking for a pen or a pencil. Okay, I got to write this down. Superstar, middle star, falling star. That was great, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I love, you got to get the book. Giving David, I have it on my desk. Giving David Cottrell a plug. I'm sure
there you go.
it's a bestseller, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's been said, you were talking about people just doing the most or the least just to skirt by. It's been
Yeah.
said that employees do the least, just enough,
Yes.
just enough
Yes.
to keep from getting
Yes.
fired. And
Yes.
companies pay employees just enough to keep them from quitting.
Yeah. Oh my
What a
gosh.
recipe for disaster, right?
Oh my gosh.
It's like, I'm gonna pay you the minimum, just enough. And
Yeah.
as an employee, I'm just going to do just the minimum. I'm not going above
Right. Right.
beyond, just
Right.
enough to get by. Interesting. Your path and your journey certainly has been usual at times, and as the title of this podcast, an unusual journey at times.
Mm.
I'd love to hear, and I'm sure the audience would as well, is how did you get to where you are? I mean, carrying the titles and being in the executive
Mm.
leadership role and all the things
Mm.
you've done. How
Mm.
did Vanessa Morris get to where she is?
Mm. I will say that I can recall probably about the age of 19. I was working for this company that did uniforms. They pressed uniforms back in the day, Exxon Mobil, you iron the, the logo on and all that. Well, just so happens I was working there and I just got out of high school, so maybe I was 18. And the buyer quit one day. that bought all the uniforms. So the general manager came to me and said, Vanessa, would you like to become the buyer? I'm like, I don't know nothing about buying. He said, if this person can do it, you can do it. Go in there and do it. I'm like, so that was the start of what I would say a career developing. So I started buying there. After a few years, I went to another company. I got my feet wet in manufacturing, which spent the bulk of my career in manufacturing. Then I went into a purchasing planning job. It was another instance. So and so went on leave of absence. Okay. They go on leave of absence. Like, would you like to do some buying and planning? Sure. Learning that, going through that process, you know. So part of that first leg of my journey was a lot of being available, meaning willing to do whatever. It wasn't like no job was too small. I was making calls. I was, faxing papers back in the day. I was doing whatever I needed to do to support the team. Another thing is that I will say that God has blessed me with a sort of moderate temperament. That I'm not one of those people that is just get very excited and angry and all that. And it's actually helped me. Even when I wanted to spit nails, I just wouldn't go into the kind of destructive mode because I don't like that behavior. I think it damages people. And I like to be able to walk over a bridge, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, after we've had a disagreement. Now, if I've torched it and burned it down, I can't go back over it. And so part of my temperament has been trying to help things move forward and not being difficult for people to deal with. And actually it has helped me tremendously. So I went from there. I ended up going to Sony. I'll say I ended up going to Sony. I was doing some buying and planning there, and I began to get a little bit of more of a leadership role there. And that was a little bit of a start, more of a lead, but not a supervisor. Okay. I went to another company. This is after several years. I went to another company, and I'm telling my age, but I won't tell it. But I went to another company, and I was planning and buying and scheduling. I was in manufacturing, I was in supply chain. A manager had came up to me and he said, you know what, Vanessa, how would you like to manage the group upstairs? It was a group of about 5 people that was customer support, but they did pricing. And so you priced all the products, you actually did the order entry. And so it was my first take. And of course, I accepted the job. Okay. And it was my first take in understanding a little bit more about finance, about EBITDA, about SG&A, overhead, revenue, profit margins, and all that, because we had to price it. So that was my first leadership title. I was customer support manager. And so I get that. Then I ended up going to another company to where I was managing like the project coordinators. And this is where I get the VP title. What happened was, of course, the company was going through some difficulty when they hired me. And they needed to lay off some people. I was 3 months into the job. They laid off all the staff. I had 2 people, and one lived and worked in Florida, and the other one, oh no, actually both were in Florida and I was in San Diego. I had no staff inside. Everybody was gone. I was 3 months into the job, and the people in Florida was like 5 months into the job. It was all brand new. I had to learn it. I had to really submit to some very difficult times related to all the things that I had to do to So it came from project management, so to speak, or project coordination. I had to learn the business. It was a company that did inspections for construction homes. I had to kind of learn the business. I mean, it was just a challenging time. But because of that, and because I had a leader that was over me, the president at the time, and the CEO, I kind of worked for both of them during my tenure there. They exposed me to the business. So I got to see a lot. And as I went through and was willing to go with them through the difficult times, the challenging times, I ended up acquiring more groups. So I acquired the quality control. I acquired the administration team. So I just started acquiring more people, more responsibility. And then we needed to go to a whole new system. And I believe it was Microsoft Dynamics. And nobody did it over 2 years. They couldn't get across the finish line. So they made me project manager over it. So we ended up, through difficult times, we ended up getting that system in because I was helping lead the project, facilitating all the pieces and getting that going. And because of all of that, my president said, we're going to make Vanessa the vice president of operations administration because of all these things. And it was within maybe 2 years. It was within a short period of time that it happened. So, and now I'm at Insperity. And how I got to Insperity was very interesting. COVID happened with that company that I was with the being vice president of operations administration. They were bought, they were acquired. So they were acquired. I got laid off. COVID happened, went back to school, and I was doing a project, ended up speaking because we were a client of Insperity's, ended up speaking with someone there, networking and so to speak, ended up getting a job at Insperity after I graduated. Well, actually, it wasn't even after I graduated, it was during my process of still going to school. And so now with Insperity, which is a full-on HR operation, and it's a wonderful company to work with. So unusual in the way that it doesn't normally, I would say, happen that way. And in the midst of that too, there's a couple of times that it happened. I didn't even have a degree during that time. When I was VP, I had no degree. This was favor, working hard, being available, willing, putting in the work. And I was blessed to have it noticed. And I had leaders that believed that I could do it. And they allowed me the opportunity to learn and to grow with the organization. And then I went back to school and got my degree. But at that time, I did not even have a degree.
Well, that certainly is something that qualifies for usual as well as
Yes.
unusual.
Unusual. Yeah.
Let's unpack some of that, because what you talked about in there, a lot of ideas were coming to my head as you were saying all of that. And one of the things I'd like to kind of dig a little deeper into is that you were asked for all of these promotions and upward advancement. So that means there had to have been a manager or supervisor, a leader.
Yes. Yes.
Recognized something in you and saw the skills that are needed to do that next level job. Not the qualification, because you didn't have experience in those areas, but you exhibited leadership that they knew could transfer over into another role. So let's talk a little bit about that, because obviously we've got a lot of people working for companies that are what I call the bench. They're waiting for promotion, they're looking for opportunities, but they may not have the skill set. What do you think it was about you that developed the skills to be able to take the next role?
I will say that I did have leadership experience from the previous jobs. To that level, no. I think one thing that my boss told me when she actually interviewed me, and this is where I got the VP title, she said, I need someone that is measured. That's one thing. I need someone who's measured. She said, I'm not. I need someone who's measured. I need someone that could still perform in chaos because it was chaotic. So again, one is that I do respect authority. I may not always agree with them, but I am going to give that respect. That's one thing. I do believe that you can sit on the bench really by choice. Really, it's by choice. Because I know some people will say, you know what, I've been overlooked, I've been overlooked. It's you, I think a lot of it, you've got to look at what you're doing or not doing. One is that one thing that you shouldn't do is bad mouth your leaders to other people. That's one thing. You should look on taking on extra responsibilities. How can you help? How can you learn? How can you grow? So availability is it. And so, and also having that aptitude to just take on stuff and digest it. And if that means that you actually got to go home and research it, you got to go home and study it, practice it, look into it, then that's what I would recommend. So I was there and and another thing too I can say is that, and I learned this from my mother, is that you may only have 5 cents in your pocket, but you don't need to look like it. So you carry yourself in a way that is professional, regardless if you are sweeping the floors or if you're the CEO. It really doesn't matter. So you're carrying yourself in a way with respect and integrity and discipline and professionalism. And so, and of course, taking on the responsibilities and things like that. So for me, I think that those things are key. It's really one thing is having the skill, another thing is a character um, kind of way that you go about your job, regardless of who's looking, regardless of what what you've been given. That you hold yourself accountable to integrity. And that goes a long way, let alone going back, getting classes, getting certificates if you want, studying, researching, getting involved, taking on assignments. Your character speaks volumes. We've all met people that they are very skilled, but nobody wants to work with them. You don't want to work with them. Or they're very skilled. They can't transfer those skills to anyone else. They're very skilled. They won't help other people. They let other people drown, which I was a firm believer when I was managing that. If you see your coworker struggling, it is your responsibility to say, how can I help? You don't just watch people flail. So those are just some of the things that culturally in an environment I try to create as a leader and try to provide and try to support, and also learning to be supported as well. And so, and that's a lifelong lesson because sometimes as leaders, we're like doing this and that, and it's hard for people to actually deposit into us. So that's also, something to work on as well. But just those are some of the things that actually come to mind.
Great. When you were talking earlier, you were talking about as a leader in a management role, you've got employees that are watching everything that you're doing. So the one
Oh, yeah.
employee who you ultimately terminated, you
Mhm.
mentioned that your employees were watching to see if maybe that person being late, as you talked about,
Mhm.
would
Mhm.
actually get into trouble for doing what they should not have done, and that is being on
Yes.
time. They were late.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
in my head, I was thinking about integrity. And then later on,
Mhm. Yeah.
you just now talked about it and said it. And I think as a leader and as a manager, we have to always watch out for the fact that people are watching us.
Yes.
Something that we do, we may not notice them or may not see that they are, but they're watching. And when there is
Yes.
a situation that comes up that we know that we need to address, if we don't
Mhm.
address that,
Uh,
then we begin to cause dissension among the rank
yes.
and file because they're
Yes.
saying, how come they're not getting into trouble and I did it and
Yes.
I got into trouble?
Yes. Yes.
So I think
Yes.
integrity what you talked about, we talk about having good integrity is the
Hmm.
key point when you're in
Yes.
leadership that we have to remember. And I'm sure if you were in a room
Hmm.
full of employees and you would ask, have you ever seen somebody show favoritism to one but not to the other? Everybody's
Yeah.
hand would go up. It can
Yes.
be the kiss of death if
It
you.
it really can. It really can. And another thing too, though, is that to me, when you're addressing it, you don't address it publicly. I call it public executions. I don't like to see it. We've all seen probably a boss that just maybe lays into their employee or belittles them in front of the group or does something that undermines them because everybody knows that the boss is upset with this person. It's um, poor leadership, in my opinion. You that those public executions really, I don't know if it's like trying to create fear, but I don't respond well to it. But so I think that you can do it in a way that your employees know it's being addressed because they see the change or they see the person gone. Either way, but not in front of the people. I think you can do your best to hold the dignity of the employee that you're coaching or working with without other people, being able to kind of feel like, oh yeah, they're getting in trouble or you know, they don't really need to see all of that. What they need to see is someone performing or it's being addressed in order for them to perform and that they are not getting this other person's work because so and so is not doing it, that kind of a thing.
Well, I can tell you that everybody has seen that, and I think no
Hmm.
one likes it. They don't want to be belittled in front of their
Yeah.
people for sure. That is definitely out. And I'll give you a management tip that we
Hmm.
teach in our workshops that a lot of people
Hmm.
just have never even been taught this, and that is this.
Hmm.
When you have an issue that you have to address,
Yes.
one of the mistakes that we make is we say to the person, I want to talk to you in my office. I want to see you in my office. And what
Mm-hmm.
happens,
Hmm.
if
Hmm.
it's said if that is
Yes.
said around other people, if it's said
Yes.
around other people, then all of a sudden
Yes.
you have created a situation. And then
Yes.
when that person gets into your office, here's
Hmm.
where the kiss of death happens. Because remember,
Yes.
when that employee leaves, they're going to
Hmm.
come out and everybody's going to say, what did they say? What did they say? What did they say?
Yes.
So as they start to talk, you're going
Hmm.
to find that they might as well have been in the room. So in that
Right.
scenario, when you call someone in, it's really important to say, I need you to help me. How
Yeah.
can I help you?
Hmm.
Phrase it in a way that says,
Hmm.
you need in order to perform better, to do your job, to be on time.
Yes.
That
Yes.
how can I help
Yes.
you? By you
Hmm.
asking for the help to help them,
Hmm.
it puts you
Hmm.
in a safer place of knowing
Hmm.
that here's a person that's willing and trying to help me to
Hmm.
perform better.
Yes.
How do
I
we
totally
do that?
agree.
And that's
Hmm.
not being done. I mean, we don't get that. We basically get the person comes in and then the manager starts out with, well, you got to do this and you're not doing that.
Hmm.
And the
Hmm.
poor
Hmm.
employee is sitting there
Hmm.
shaking, thinking, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
what's going to happen next?
Yes.
Am I going to get written up?
Yes.
Am I going to get
Yeah.
fired?
Hmm.
We have to get to a place
Exactly.
where we don't do that. And that takes training. That takes real
Yes,
skill
it
development
does.
to be
And
able
and
to
it's
do
I agree. And it also takes because like, servant leadership is what it's called. So it's really looking at it as, like you said, how can I help you? It's taken on an attitude and a disposition of servanthood. Yes, you're the leader. You got the power and authority to hire and fire, to delegate and discipline and all those things, but a servant attitude towards it. Like you said, how can I help you? How can I help you get better? What can we do to resolve whatever it is? And walking them through it. And you're not coddling anyone, or you're not becoming codependent or with them. And you're not leading with your emotions is another thing. Calling them in when you're angry. I'm mad. Get Jim in here right now. We're gonna do that's not really the best time. So it's treating them like a human being all the way through the process. when, from the time you get them or they move on through the organization or out of your department or out the door. But with some respect, is because we would want that. We would want to be treated with respect. Whether we're getting fired, a pink slip, a promotion, doesn't matter. With respect.
Yeah. Respect
Yeah.
is so
Yeah.
key. And that it's and these are little things, when you talk about
Yeah.
between the lines, these are some of the things that managers, if they never practice it, they
Hmm.
never get good at it, and then they
Yeah.
never exhibit it. So I think
Yeah.
it's important, things that you're talking about is to be able to sandwich between all the stuff going on is that level of humility, showing
Yes.
respect to people at all times,
Yes.
asking the person, what is it that you need? Because let's face it, we don't know
Hmm.
what's going on in our employees' lives.
Mm-mm.
They
Mm-mm.
leave the place of employment. We
Yeah.
don't have any idea what they're dealing with back at home. Who knows
Right.
the situation? Because not everybody,
Exactly.
as my mother would say, put their business out in the streets. They don't
Right.
tell you. You don't know if there's a
Right.
sick parent, a sick child. You don't know if there's a
Right.
financial crisis. You just
Right.
don't know what's going on
Mm-mm.
in his life.
Mm-mm.
So that
Mm-mm.
respect and humility from a leader standpoint, it needs to
Yeah.
be exhibited at all times because the
Right.
employee that feels disrespected and
Oh,
shares
yeah.
that, and it can
Yes.
breathe through a corporation like a
Oh,
cat,
yes.
not to
Yes, it
your
can.
reputation. So
You're absolutely right. I agree. I agree. It will. It sets up a sort of culture that causes, people to retreat. They don't tell you things. You don't know. They're not engaged because they may hide things. I remember working for an organization that the employees thought they were getting in trouble because they were machinists making machine parts, and they were throwing the machine parts that were out of spec in the canyon behind us because they didn't want that part to go through and it was out of specification. So, I'm like, so okay, so where did that come from? Wow, what did you think was going to happen to you if this came out of spec? Let's look at, maybe it's the machine, maybe it needs to be recalibrated. It could be a number of things. Maybe, the specifications weren't clear to you. Let's walk them through or whatever. But yeah, that kind of like the fear tactic that I've seen some leaders use in the past, it's just causes havoc in an organization. It really does.
a lot of managers use it, and a lot of
Yeah,
managers use it, and they're not aware of it.
yeah,
Just not aware of
yeah,
it.
yeah,
They're in a position where sometimes they, as we say, they speak before they think.
yeah,
Something comes
yeah.
out, and it just
Mm-hmm.
comes out regular. People aren't always able to have two sides of their personality. It's kind of like they are what they are. So in
Yeah.
one case, if they're out talking to buddies or just
Mm-hmm.
family or friends,
Mm-hmm.
they are a bit brass, may I say?
Yes, yes.
Well, guess what? When they come to work,
Right.
they're a bit brass.
Right.
It just is. And if you're under that leadership, then what you're getting is that, and then we chuck it off and we say, oh, that's just Bob. Bob's right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Bob, that's okay for Bob when he's talking to Michael.
Right.
But when Bob's talking to you, all of a sudden,
Right.
it's not okay.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
we call it being brass, but that's just
Mm-hmm.
based on the fact that that's how they speak. And it's a normal way of them handling issues or talking to people in general. And in
Right.
management, you just have to tone that down and almost have
Yes.
a totally different approach to things because it just
Yes.
doesn't work. It doesn't work
Mm-mm.
well because we
Mm-mm.
know that the number one reason a person leaves a job is
Mm-hmm.
because of their management.
Yes. Yeah.
That
Because of the
is
people.
it.
Yes.
And in
Yes, that
addition,
is it.
in addition to that, when you're in leadership, you find that whatever you say, we teach a class and it's a
Oh.
workshop called executive presence.
Mm-hmm.
That's where when you're in a leadership role, especially a senior leadership roles like
Mm-hmm.
that you held, you
Mm-hmm.
gotta be so careful with literally everywhere you go,
Oh, yes.
that you do, every word out
Yes.
of your mouth. Because, like we talked about earlier, people are watching that and they will
Yes.
instantly notice favoritism of one that you didn't show
Yes.
to someone else.
Yes.
That never works. Never
No.
does.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No, it doesn't. It doesn't work. And um, that does cause problems within an organization because they're like, well, you know what, if so and so is getting away with this and that, why do I need to do X, Y, and Z? And that's where that actually the superstar fallen star kind of thing comes in. Because in the book, it talks about this individual that basically left the company. They were tired of carrying the load. They're like, how so and so is getting away with this? They're really getting a pass on it because his friend or he hired him from the outside, he brought him with him or whatever the case is. And so, you know what, I'm gonna go. So yeah, with an org leadership is not it's not easy. It's very rewarding, but it really calls upon you to have a lot of sacrifice of you may feel like doing a particular thing or saying something, but you can't. You have to rephrase it. It takes a lot of discipline. You have to gauge your time and say, you know what, I'm going to get back to you on that because whatever you just heard sent you through the roof. And so you're like, let me think about that. Let me get back to you. You know, you've got to watch it. Like you said, you're being watched, you're being looked at, and it's challenging. Relationships change, especially. I had a situation at one of the jobs that I had, I started managing friends. That was very hard. We all kind of grew up together in the organization, and now I'm their manager. And it was a little problematic for a while because the employee just couldn't accept it. I'm not going to really eat lunch with you anymore because it's going to cause problems. I'm not really going to engage in those conversations because the relationship dynamics have changed. And it took her a while and she didn't like it for a while. But we began to understand and began to come to some terms of my role has changed. And so I have to do what the role requires. And it was hard, but it ended up working out, but it took time. It did. It took time.
Now, that subject is another one of those subjects that we could spend
Hmm.
an hour on, where
Yes.
we find that an employee gets promoted within the same department to be
Yes.
manager of that department of the people that they used to hang out with. Right
Yes.
there. And it happens a lot, you know.
It does. It does.
You're a
Hmm.
superstar in that department and the manager leaves for whatever reason and you're kind of next in
Yeah.
line and now you're managing the people that you used to, hang out with and do things.
Yes.
So,
Hmm.
you know what, Vanessa? This has been awesome. I have thoroughly enjoyed being able to
Me
walk
too.
down this road with you on the journey of a leader. Sometimes it's common and usual, and
Hmm.
sometimes it's an unusual journey. But I think you've just laid out a bunch of things that are really kind of sandwiched between bigger things. And it's a
Yeah.
lot of reading between the lines. In fact, one of the last statements you just made, leadership is not easy,
Mm-mm.
exclamation mark. We,
Yeah.
we all want to be there because we want
Yes.
more money or we want a
Yes.
level of authority. But
Yes.
to your point, it's not easy
No.
because the types of things that we just talked about, where you can't show
Hmm.
favoritism, but you don't even know
Yes.
that you're not showing favoritism. You think that you're
Yeah.
not, but you actually are, all types
Yeah.
of stuff like that. Maybe you got
Yeah.
promoted within the same department, and then you and Susie Q used to hang out and
Yes.
come back from lunch
Yes.
late, and you knew.
Yes.
I mean, I've talked to managers and they say, well, sometimes employees will call and have another employee clock them out if it's a clock in, clock.
Oh, yes.
So you know all the tricks, and now you're the
Yeah.
manager. I mean,
Right.
it almost never works out right. But anyway, this has been fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm going to give you a moment here, in case there was a
Mm,
thought, something that you wanted to
mm,
say that you omitted and didn't get a chance to, or said you'll come
mm,
back to. I'd love to have
mm.
you have an opportunity to offer any other pearls of wisdom you'd like to offer. So right now, Vanessa, the floor is yours.
I will say to most leaders is that don't give up. Don't throw it in. Don't throw in a towel because this is a challenging time for a lot of leaders, whether it's relationship problems, or not employee relations problems, um, financial problems within the business, change of whether it's technology or AI or challenges or retention and all of those things. It's really looking at and I'm really speaking to really small business owners. But small business owners become large business owners. So the same things apply. That, don't give up. Look at what the objectives are. Put a plan in place to go ahead and continue to meet them. And don't give up in this kind of environment. There's a lot of layoffs. There's tons of, people getting terminated and all those sorts of things. But the original intent of why the business started, keep on going with it. And all of those leaders or would-be leaders, keep working at it. Keep going. Keep trying. You didn't get that promotion, try another one. Learn new skills, learn new abilities, learn new ways of communicating. I mean, I love the DISC. If anybody's taken DISC, maybe you've taken DISC before, DISC, and to learn about how you communicate, how to best communicate with other personality types, how to develop a better culture, be a bridge builder. And so instead of really tearing those things down, stop complaining, go ahead and put the effort in, and it'll happen in due time. But you can't give up. You can't quit.
Thank you so much. That was very good. Words to the wise. Certainly appreciate that. And to all of you out there listening, we thank you. Again, if something resonated with you, we encourage and invite you to subscribe and become part of our viewing audience. And so until we have an opportunity to come together again, thank you for listening and or watching this episode of The Inside Scoop. Signing off for now until we see you again. Bye for now.
For more exclusive leadership insights, be sure to subscribe to The Inside Scoop on YouTube and Spotify. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that share button and spread the word. See you next time on The Inside Scoop.